You think of the FBI, and you imagine this unstoppable force, right? The world's most powerful law enforcement agency. So what on earth would it take for them to just throw in the towel? Well, today we're diving into the incredible story of the one fugitive who actually forced them to surrender.
Yeah, this whole chase didn't end with some dramatic shootout or a high-stakes capture. Nope, it ended with a quiet, almost boring bureaucratic memo. The memo basically said, the guy lives in a country where we can't touch him. But what it really meant was deafening. We cannot get him, we give up.
So, who is this guy? Who is Semyon Mogilevich? And how in the world did he become so untouchable that the FBI just had to walk away? That is the incredible story we're going to unpack right now.
Okay, so let's rewind. Our story really kicks off on May 13th, 1998, in this sleepy little town, Newtown, Pennsylvania. You've got FBI agents, full tactical gear surrounding what they think is the headquarters of a company called YBM Magnus. And this wasn't just any company. This was supposedly a billion-dollar giant that was taking Wall Street by storm.
See, on paper, YBM Magnus looked like a fairy tale, a Wall Street dream come true. Its stock was skyrocketing. Investors were told it was this cutting-edge manufacturer making incredible products. But when the agents finally breached the doors, they found, well, nothing. Just silence. The whole thing was an elaborate pump-and-dump scheme. They'd hyped the stock up, got everybody to pour their money in, and then cashed out, leaving them with worthless paper. The entire factory, it was a stage. The shiny, impressive machinery, just props. The products all boxed up and ready to go, dummies. Literally bought from other companies and just repackaged. It was all a show.
And the price tag for this massive fraud was just staggering. When all the dust settled, over $150 million had simply vanished. Just gone, wiping out the entire life savings of regular people. We're talking teachers, firefighters, families all across North America.
So as the agents started tracing the money, trying to figure out where it all went, they followed this crazy maze of shell companies, these fake businesses that exist only on paper to hide cash. And one name just kept popping up, Semyon Mogilevich. He was a ghost. He had no real U.S. presence, had never even set foot in the country. At first, they figured they were just chasing a very clever white-collar con artist. They were about to find out they'd stumbled onto the boss of bosses of the entire Russian mafia.
So, how does a guy go from being a con artist to one of the most feared and powerful criminals on the entire planet? His story is, well, it's a masterclass in ruthless, terrifying ambition.
Mogilevich's career, you can really break it down into three phases. It all started back in the 70s with this unbelievably cruel con, where he literally stole the life savings from his own community. Then, in the chaos of the late 80s, he moved to Budapest and built a proper syndicate. And he wasn't recruiting just any street thugs. He was hiring ex-KGB killers to be his muscle. And from there, he went corporate.
He wasn't just a mob boss. No, he built a multinational criminal corporation. His portfolio, if you can call it that, just exploded. He was dealing in everything. I mean everything, from weapons and drugs to human trafficking and money laundering on an industrial scale. This guy was a true global threat.
And here's the genius of how he stayed one step ahead of everyone. One day, he's Seaman Tellish. The next, he's Sergei Schneider. He collected passports like people collect stamps, just moving freely across any border he wanted. Think about it. No single police force could ever track him. No single charge could ever stick to a guy who could just disappear and reappear as somebody else entirely.
But look, a global criminal empire and a 45-count indictment from the U.S. government, that should have been enough to bring him down, right? So now we get to the real mystery. Why was this man so protected?
As one FBI agent put it, this guy operated on a whole different level. The famous mobster John Gotti, maybe he could influence a city block in New York. Mogilevich, this guy could pull levers that affected entire countries. His power went so far beyond the typical criminal underworld.
Here's how he did it. He made himself absolutely indispensable to the Russian state. He offered services that the government could use but never, ever officially acknowledge. He could move money anywhere, traffic any goods they needed, and, this is the big one, he became a secret player in the natural gas trade, basically giving the Kremlin a deniable chokehold on other nations that depended on its energy.
And the evidence for this, it just kept piling up from all over. You've got secret tapes from the Ukrainian president's office, testimony from a murdered FSB defector, reports from Ukrainian intelligence. They all pointed to the exact same conclusion. Mogilevich wasn't just hiding out in Russia, he was working with Russia.
So, the FBI has this massive 45-count indictment, and they decide it's time to make a move. They decide to deploy their most powerful, most public weapon, hoping they can finally force this guy out of the shadows.
And you'd think the odds were in their favor, right? I mean, since 1950, when you put a fugitive on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list, it has a 94% success rate. The global pressure just becomes too much. It almost always works. Almost.
But every single move the FBI made was just effortlessly blocked. I mean, look at this. He gets arrested in Moscow in 2008, and everyone thinks, okay, this is it. But then, a year later, he's quietly released because the charges were supposedly not grave. Even putting him on the top 10 list did absolutely nothing. He was just living comfortably in Moscow, completely sheltered from it all. And this is where the FBI's whole chase just slams into a solid brick wall. See, to get a fugitive from another country, you need an extradition treaty. That's basically an agreement between countries. But here's the catch. Russia's constitution flat out forbids them from extraditing their own citizens. And what passport was Mogilevich holding? A Russian one. For the FBI, that was it. The game was over. Checkmate.
This new reality led to the only possible conclusion, an inevitable and, frankly, unprecedented end to the whole manhunt.
The FBI officially conceded. With a really dry press statement, they just took him off the list, admitting that, yep, he lives in a country with no extradition treaty. It was a public surrender.
And the fallout from this, it just left this trail of destruction. That huge indictment is still sitting somewhere, just gathering dust. The investors, they got pennies back on the dollar, if they were lucky. And the witnesses, people who risked everything to come forward and testify, it all meant nothing. In the end, Mogilevich won.
And if you compare him to someone like El Chapo, you can see exactly why Mogilevich is still a free man. El Chapo also seemed untouchable for years, right? But the key difference is that Mexico eventually cooperated with the U.S. Russia never will. And that's why one of these men is in a supermax prison for life, and the other is still free, living in a nice Moscow suburb.
The story of Mogilevich is just a chilling reminder that justice, well, it isn't always absolute. In this globalized world, crime can cross borders way faster than law enforcement can. It proves that if you have enough power and enough political protection, the law can be bent, it can even be broken, and that forces us to ask one last, really unsettling question. If one man can do this, how many others just like him are hiding in plain sight?